Good afternoon, welcome back. It's Wednesday, what do we got here? The 21st? Yep. It's Wednesday, the 21st of June. I was up pretty late last night editing that ridiculously long tools video, and then a few hours more this morning getting all the chapter markers and the links and all that done. But it's done. I'm happy that I did it. But it means that I have this big mess back here that I need to clean up. Thankfully, it's a really well organized mess and everything has a home. I want to say thank you again to Broken Biker for making that recommendation. I'm really happy I made that video and it forced me to clean up my shop, which is great. So getting restarted or sort of regrouping on the fuel tank build, we had a bit of a delay there because of waiting on some tools and some parts. All of those things have arrived now. So what I'm going to do today is just get this stuff cleared away, spend some time practicing with the old Rolo-Flair because I just got it. So I may or may not make a flare on the vent tubes today. Depends on how quickly I make it through the learning curve on this thing. The other thing that I need to do is go ahead and drill that 9/16 hole in the fuselage attach bracket for the flop tube that's going to go there, so we can start thinking about getting that all assembled. So I think that today I want to lay the groundwork so that tomorrow those things are sort of in place, and tomorrow, you know, get sticky again and actually seal up, close out the end ribs. I don't think that I'm really missing anything. I think it's really about just getting the vent tubes finished up and getting the flop tube bits and pieces ready to go. I think that should be it. This is kind of a long intro for very little work. So I'm just gonna go ahead and let the GoPro roll while I clean up my mess and start doing that stuff. One more thing, stay tuned toward the end of the video. I have sort of a channel content, whatever announcement that you might be interested in hearing. So stick around for that. Anyways, thanks for being here. Like, subscribe, all that stuff. Let's build an airplane.
I decided to leave a little bit of cleanup in here so I had a moment to talk about small parts storage. If you look on my tool chest up on the top, all those little jars, those are little plastic jars with metal lids that I picked up at Hobby Lobby, and then I put a bunch of magnets all over that thing. This is where I try to keep most of my rivets, washers, nuts, bolts, things like that, that I have a bunch of, and I just use a label maker, obviously, so that I can find them really quickly. I will say one thing is that you get bags of parts that have, they have part numbers that are different than what are on the plans, so they're alternates. So put both labels on there so you don't have to go back and keep cross-referencing. You get something instructing to say this part replaces this part. They're really long, confusing part numbers. Put both labels on the jar, and you won't constantly be running back between the plans and the inventory list. So I'm going to take a little time here to learn how to use this Rolo-Flair tool. As I've said before, the one that I was supposed to buy in the first place. I'll tell you what, I don't know. I spent maybe 30 minutes playing around with it, making sure that I understood how to get consistent results with it. But man, what a difference it makes. So you see, I cut off like a 12-inch length of tube to experiment with, and then try one, cut that flare off, try another one, cut that flare off. I've got a little bit of bow lube there so I can keep everything clean and moving nicely. You don't have to guess about the depth, like how far you place your tube into the tool, because when the jaws of it are open, a little arm moves over and caps the travel, the length that it goes in there. So I think at this point I've got a flare that I like on my test piece, and what I'm doing is going to Van's website, and I know that they have a a little cheat sheet there on how to torque these AN fittings, because it's not something that you can always get a torque wrench on. And so that's what I've got up on the computer right there. And yeah, it's, boy, don't waste your time with those other tools. It's not like this was a little bit easier. It was a night and day difference. So here I'm cleaning off the cone. Notice how that thing, it's not a conical cone, so to speak. It's like 3 cones that come together in a point. It's got 3 different lobes on it, which is kind of interesting. It makes the flaring process kind of easy. I mean, if you get to the point with this tool that you feel like you're cranking down, you have over flared it. It doesn't take that much to get it to the right point. Whereas the other ones, you really do have to crank on them. And another interesting thing about this, compared to the other ones, is that the jaws, well, they fit right. You know, the other ones are kind of like not really, what do I say? The tolerances in their manufacturing process left something to be desired. This one doesn't mar. Oh, I mean, you're always going to get a little bit of marring on the tube, but this one doesn't brutalize it. It actually remains pretty clean. So you can go ahead and here with that wing nut, this is where you're kind of closing the jaws. You can crank that down. In fact, you really do need to crank it down. One of the sample ones that I did before this, I did a little bit more lightly because I wanted to see how it was with marring. And when you do it lightly, your flare, the outside of your flare, will give you what looks like a couple of seams where the 2 jaws come together. And if you, like this, crank down that wing nut to hold it really snugly, it doesn't mar the crap out of the material, and you get a really clean flare. So yeah, you don't have to crank on it. I go to where it's about ready to stop, and then I give it like another quarter turn, and then I go back and forth a little bit. But you can see that that result is far superior to the ones that I was getting before. So I'm very happy with the decision to get the Rolo-Flair. I'm very disappointed in my decision to not just do it at the very beginning. But that's how it goes. So basically test fitting the AN fittings and making sure I'm happy with it. And I am. So I think that from here I'll go on, and that's one vent line. I'll make the flare on the second one, and then we'll get into finally installing and actually fitting those in the fuel tanks. I think that, this was, by the way, throwing this thing in the vise was a great idea that I probably wouldn't have thought of on my own. It's got a grip on it that has finger grooves on it, so you think that you should grab it, and you can. But when I went to go visit my technical counselor, I don't know, last week or something like that, and he was showing me this tool, he's like, make your life easy. You got a vise over there. It's an extra set of hands. So that's just a good tip to make your life a little bit easier. And another endorsement for, if you watch my tools video, another endorsement for having a sturdy, heavy vise that's bolted to that table. So threading the vent lines in here. One more thing on that vise. I purposely put it as close to the corner of the table as I could. It's a swivel vise, so I can always kind of reposition it when I'm working with long material. I can always find a way to get long material to fit somewhere on the radius of that corner. And the other thing is, that vise has an anvil on it, and so it's as close as it can be to being right over a leg, which means you can pound away on it without flexing the table. This is extremely satisfying to finally be at this point where I have a good usable flare and I can put these AN fittings together. this is not the final, but I need this to be connected like it is right here so that I can get to work on the other end, getting the length correct. So this is the outboard end of the vent tube. So you want it to go as close as it can to the top of the tank skin where it's located without touching it, and then also, not touching the rib that's going to be going there. So what I've done here is made a mark where that should land, and then fooling around, bending it. And there I'm like, this sucks. So I take the other rib off so I can, or I disconnect the other end so I can scoot it out and work on the bend. I did it differently on this second tank, which is once I marked the length, I just immediately, I didn't try to bend it while it was in the clip. I just disconnected the other end, slid it out, which is what I'm doing right here. Somebody had a question quite a while back when I was doing these fuel flanges in that clip. Yes, you do want to get that clip pinched more or less all the way around the fuel vent line. So once I had it in position, I just reached in with a pair of needle nose pliers and squeezed it around there. So I'm pretty happy, in fact, very happy with how these vent lines turned out, because now that means that I am free to finally close out the ends of these tanks. So I think I did that one. I run through the second one here. It's funny. So I did this one better in terms of like how I just described with working on the end of the vent line. But I didn't do it any more quickly, because right here, as I'm running the whole, getting the whole vent line run through the tank, which is a super simple process, put the end rib in, and then go to put the fitting on, and I realized that I didn't put the nut on. I didn't put the nut on the fitting, so I have to take that end rib back off again to put the nut on the fitting, do the whole thing. But yeah, make my little trim. This side, was a bit easier to do simply because I wasn't an idiot about it, and I just disconnected the end fitting so I could pull that vent line out and had more room to work on making the bend. Long story short, turned out great. Very happy. No snafus. Okay, so now we got to get into making a 9/16 hole in the fuselage attach bracket for the flop tube and fitting. And this was a bit of a bear. Look at the size of that drill bit. And I'm putting this hole in a piece of material that already has rivet holes drilled around. So I need to make sure that when I'm doing this, I'm still preserving the edge distance on those other holes. And as it turns out, when I made that rivet pattern, I didn't crowd those rivet holes into the center. I made sure they had enough edge distance to the edge of the piece, and that meant that I had enough room to do this. But I mean, right on the edge, like it's very exact. And as you're watching this and you can see the vibration and everything like that, drilling it was difficult to keep exact, which is why I had to keep kind of resetting it, tightening everything down again. So much vibration, which goes back to my tools video. If I were starting again and I didn't have a hand-me-down drill press like this, I would have done a freestanding drill press that was a little bit more robust and gave me a better ability to get things locked down tight. But it did work out. I got the hole in there, and I also have an out. I still have enough material that if I wanted to completely remake that bracket, I can do that. But here I'm just cleaning up the inside of that hole, and the battery died before I got to it, but I actually did. You'll see me getting the AN fitting in here in a minute, but then I did go grab the flop tube and connected that as well. So that's it.
Hey, I'm back. It's about 10 minutes after 8 o'clock in the evening. I accomplished what I set out to do today, so I'm very happy about that. I did say I was going to make an announcement at the end of the video, so here it is. I've been thinking about it for a while, and I've decided that in the next week or so, I'm going to launch a Patreon page. This is going to be for anybody who wants access to the full sort of unsped up work sessions as they happen. As you know, in my videos, I use a lot of time lapse to compress everything down into like a 9 to 12 minute video. Usually the GoPro footage is sped up a factor of 40 or 50 times. I don't save that stuff. Going forward, I do want to have the full record, and so I decided that I would put it up on Patreon. I could host it there. Anybody who likes to have stuff like this going on in the background where it just goes on and on and on for hours and you pay attention when you do or don't want to, will have access to that. For me, it will provide a place that I can use their storage to store dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of terabytes of video files over the next couple of years while I finish up this project. Once it's launched, in addition to that, I'll start learning about different ways that we can create different types of community things in there. And I'll probably throw some Hippie Pilot merch on there as well. So that's the announcement. I would love to hear your feedback. If you think it's a bad idea, if you think it's stupid or whatever, let me know. If it's something that you're into, let me know as well. I'll take all of that stuff into consideration. I really do enjoy the interaction that I've had with you guys, and I'm looking forward to much more of it. So for Wednesday, the 21st of June, 2023, that's a wrap. Tomorrow, we'll continue building an airplane. See you then.